Hello, Oscar fans. The Irishman was just released into theaters on November 1st, and Martin Scorsese has moved ahead of Quentin Tarantino in our experts' Oscar predictions for Best Director. I'm Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here with Susan Wloszczyna and Tom O'Neill. So first off, Susan, tell us about how that Best Director is shaping up right now where our experts are concerned.
Well, right now we have 28 experts making their predictions, and all 28 now are predicting Martin Scorsese, and 15 are saying he is predicted to win. He has 71 to 20 odds, and has been happening since Martin Scorsese joined the race here. His main competition is Quentin Tarantino now, who has 26 predicting a nomination and 9 predicting a win, and he has 4-1 odds. And right now his trajectory is that little red arrow that no one wants to see. But coming on strong is the director of Parasite, South Korean director Bong Joon Ho. He has 24 predicting a nomination for him, 3 winning, and 5-1 odds and going up. So he's someone who could sneak in there because he is established. He did Snowpiercer, he did The Host, and he's sort of, it's a foreign film, but it's going to be up for South Korea for Best Language, which might create a Roma problem there. But I think it's a very contemporary film that doesn't feel as foreign as some foreign films do, if that makes sense. It's very relatable and very, well done. I think this is probably, his best film yet. So that's an interesting trio. And then Noah Baumbach is next with 21 nominating, 1 winning, and 6-1 odds. And a film most people, I would assume, haven't seen yet, 1917, Sam Mendes. 11 are predicting a nomination, and he doesn't have any wins, and already his little red arrow's going down. So whatever that means, it's probably not good. But those are the top 5 for now.
And what's interesting about those top 2 is that Tarantino is considered overdue because he's never won Best Director, but the irony is that he actually has more Oscars than Scorsese because Tarantino won twice as a screenwriter, and Scorsese just has the one as a director. Tom, what do you think about this race? Does Scorsese have it now? Is he just going to take it out, or are we going to see a surprise? I know you've said you see Bong Joon Ho winning this Oscar before.
Yes, on the ground here in Hollywood, the what you get all the time from Hollywood insiders is, oh yes, The Irishman, oh yes, this movie and that movie, but Parasite, wow! And boy, it's going to win foreign film. I've got Bong winning director. I think there's when you actually feel the response from established Hollywood. Yesterday, we shot a video with Olivia Wilde that you'll see soon at Gold Derby. And she directed Booksmart. She was there to talk about it. But the minute the camera went off, she says, have you seen Parasite? Oh my God. Off she went on Parasite. It was a typical example of the spotlight syndrome, which was, that year everyone said, oh, The Revenant's going to win and blah, 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 blah. And Inarritu did win director, of course. But the spotlight won picture. It was the little thing that was in their hearts. And so that changes the scenario. And you look at the recent trend of nominees, they have been snubbing some of the big commercial films, like A Star is Born and Green Book didn't get nominated for director last year. So that there are other issues there that may have caused that. But we have seen this art house preference by voters in this category because directorial achievement is, a celebration of the artistry of the filmmaker, and that's where these Oscars often go snobby. So we may be making a mistake assuming that it's the big names, the big auteurs of Scorsese and Tarantino. On the other hand, you can say that these guys who have traded the victory crown over and over recently, like Inarritu and Cuarón, are the equivalent of Tarantino and Scorsese because they're beloved. It's a fascinating race. What do you think, Daniel?
I do think it's interesting, with Bong Joon Ho rising with passion for Parasite as strong as it seems to be. This has been, it would be very fitting. It's been the decade of international directors. Because just in the last 10 years, as you mentioned, Alfonso Cuarón, he won twice. Alejandro González Iñárritu won twice. Ang Lee won his second Oscar for directing for Life of Pi. Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water. So we've seen a very international skew in this category. And this past year, we had 2 foreign language films nominated for Best Director with both Roma and Cold War in there. So I feel like Bong Joon Ho, as that film picks up steam, depending on how many nominations it ends up getting, where it ends up landing, I think he is the sleeping giant in this race.
Who would you vote for, Daniel?
Of what I've seen, personally, I would vote for Bong Joon Ho. I think I have Martin Scorsese predicted at the moment, just because right now the narrative of sort of legendary filmmaker making his masterpiece and winning twice. I feel like no one will bat an eye to give Martin Scorsese a second Oscar. It's not like, oh, we took care of him already for The Departed, but people still remember he lost for Raging Bull. He lost for Goodfellas. There's still sort of an IOU, and directors like Steven Spielberg and, as I mentioned, Ang Lee and Alfonso Cuarón, they've won multiple Oscars for directing in their careers, and certainly Scorsese is worthy of being in that company just in terms of his career stature. So I think right now it might be between those two, but I'm not counting out Tarantino. I think this race is still open, and I am interested in seeing 1917 because that is a director's movie. It is a one-take kind of bravura spectacle that still hasn't screened, but we know the style of it. If it hits, it could hit big in a huge way.
Susan, who would you vote for?
I have a soft spot for Tarantino, and I think he and Martin Scorsese, are probably the most influential American directors right now. I mean, if you see a crime film, both of them will be in there somehow. Just the way still people are, making narratives fractured the way that Pulp Fiction did. That's still going on. And I think he deserves a directing Oscar. Martin can get the best picture if he wants. I think as a director, he should be acknowledged too.
But do you think, and I don't feel it here in Hollywood, I don't feel that that voters are aware that Tarantino's never won for directing. As Daniel's pointed out, he's won twice for screenplay. So they've seen Tarantino up there on stage, and they're not, as sophisticated in terms of little data and this stuff. But if the studio gets the narrative out there for Tarantino, he's never won for directing and blah, blah, and I don't think they've sounded those drums sufficiently. Then I don't think that's so much of a factor. I remember the year of Hurt Locker, and it was Avatar, right, and Inglourious Basterds. And it was a fascinating Oscar year because Harvey Weinstein had 9 that year, if I'm recalling the year correctly. And Daniel, am I recalling the year correctly?
Yeah, that was Hurt Locker versus Avatar versus Inglourious Bastard, and the narrative was very much Catherine Bigelow versus her ex, James Cameron, and I think that might have kind of overshadowed the Quentin.
Yes, it ended up taking things away. But I remember, it was like the first or second week of December, being in New York. Harvey had a luncheon in the Time Warner Center in New York, and he was so into Nine. He really thought the musical Nine was his Oscar movie, and I'm thinking, it's not. It's Tarantino. It's Inglourious Basterds. If anything could take it down, and Inglourious Basterds, I think, had the second or third most nominations. Why I'm mentioning this is a fascinating thing happened come January of that award cycle, and that was, I don't live far away from Spago and all these hot spot places. They throw parties all the time in Hills. And this town lit up for Tarantino. There were parties. Everyone was having parties for Tarantino to get him that last-minute Oscar thing. And maybe it was Harvey just driving them all crazy behind the scenes. You do an event and you do an event. But I think he came close. I think that movie had a surge at the end there when there was this kind of the anti-Avatar, anti-Cameron thing going on. And they were looking for an alternative possibly for her. Like, I think there was a missed opportunity for Tarantino in that movie this year that they didn't realize till the end. They pushed, and I think they came that close to actually pulling it off. So if they turn on those rocket blasters this year for they, meaning the campaign behind Tarantino, they do it again, and they do it early enough, I think that they can get that narrative out there, and things can help. But there has been a distinct pattern in Oscar voting ever since they introduced VHS tapes and then DVDs and now online screeners, is that the big commercial movies don't do as well, and there is a obvious slant toward art house movies now, probably because the voters are actually seeing them. They don't have to get in their car and go across town to see the prime of Miss Jean Brody. It's a miracle that thing won. But so I think that the art house snobism is a trend at the Oscars that we certainly see in this director race in a profound way. And so I think that this Bong Joon Ho thing is very real. I think it would Best Picture if it doesn't encounter the Roma problem that Susan was mentioning. And Susan, explain what you meant by that.
Well, last year, a lot of us thought Roma would win and Alfonso Cuarón would be Best Director. But, when you have the option of giving it the Best Foreign Language Film, and then you can, give an award to something else, I think sometimes that's a way to get your, cake and eat it too. But of course, Best Foreign Language is nothing to sneeze at, but it's not the same as getting the big one. And I think maybe that will be a way to, pay back what they love about Parasite. But you're in the midst of Hollywood. I'm not. So I
Susan lives in the DC suburbs. Yeah.
Right. So, but, I went to Middleburg and everybody was talking about Parasite a lot. Maybe more than Mr. Rogers, because I think as much as I love that movie, it's just not the right time for something like that to be.
It's not pretentious either. It's lovely, wonderful movie, everybody. Wow, it's so good.
But what I like about both the Tarantino film and both the Scorsese film, it's sort of both a culmination of where they are now. Both of them, Tarantino's in his 50s. Scorsese's in his 70s, and it's movies reflecting on age and, how the industry treats you and, obviously crime and Hollywood are two different things, but it's older men reflecting on where they are now. And I think that's very interesting to me that they're both at that stage in their career that, they're looking back and forward at where they are as filmmakers. And both of these films too reflect really what I think most people like about what they do in movies and the subject matter and things like that. So they're not really that far apart. They're just, reflecting their differences and their styles and their interests. And it's interest. I mean, I love that these two films are the big ones, at least for now, because, you know, it's kind of a payoff to these two great artists, and they're doing their best work right now, I think.
Yeah.
It's interesting
Go ahead, Dan.
It's interesting that another potential avenue for Bong Joon Ho is that if these two nostalgic films from these really admired veteran filmmakers, Tarantino and Scorsese, both kind of looking back and reflecting on age, I wonder if they might attract a similar voter, which would further open the door for Bong Joon Ho to kind of come up the middle with this very kind of left field film that takes you by surprise every 30 minutes or so. That's an interesting three-way race that could shape into.
There is, and in the case for Scorsese to win here, and this to go all the way to Best Picture, is that it is the movie people are talking about the most. Of course, yeah, they've got this Parasite thing brewing over here that they love to talk about. They, the voters, and they, the film industry leaders. But the movie they are talking about, everyone's talking about with great admiration and great affection, is The Irishman. And the movie prior to that they were talking about with great admiration and affection and love for Tarantino was Hollywood. So it's often the Oscars are led by what they're all talking about, and this longing to reward. I love the reflection point you're bringing up, Susan. That's wonderful. These old men looking back at their lives because the Academy is older. And award watchers like me are older, and we do often respond so powerfully emotionally to that factor. And Scorsese, you look back through Oscar history, you would think at some future date, Scorsese should have won too. Come on, Clint Eastwood won too, and so many of these directors have won too. This category is full of double winners, and the case for Tarantino is that he's never won. It's really a shame. If there's one thing that Quentin Tarantino has established in his life, is that he is just one of the greatest filmmakers ever made. My God, he has to have an Oscar for direction. It's criminal that he doesn't. And so those are very important factors, and it's often about the person behind the camera that I think some of the reasons we've seen Guillermo and Inarritu and Cuarón winning is that they alone, the three amigos, are just so admirable and commendable and such strong affection for them that I think that helped drive their wins. And there is an enormous amount of affection for Scorsese and Tarantino. And let's remember always and never forget, this is an award. This is an award where Hollywood's voting on itself. And you never should forget that what's happening is we're getting an inside peek at the family of Hollywood and who they love and who they don't and who's in and who's out. And that's what's naughty about it. It's often not about who wins, of course. It's who's due. And that's the reason we love the Oscars. And these three personalities in this race, wow, it's exciting to see, and it can go any which way.
There is one left curve, though, and that's giving a streaming film an Oscar for Best Picture. They haven't done it yet.
Well, they came really close to doing it for Roma, and if you consider that Roma was not only a streaming film, but a black and white film not in the English language, it was a Spanish language film. It didn't have big stars in it. Its lead actress was, kind of an unknown first-time actor. So the fact that it got as close as it did might mean that the streaming barrier isn't quite as strong as it could be, because now you've got a Scorsese movie starring Robert De Niro. The reviews are incredible. People will be able to watch it when it starts streaming whenever they want. So it'll be more accessible than most awards contenders. So I think this will be the big test of whether streaming will be, could be a really big thing at the Oscars in the years to come. or whether there might still be some barrier to entry from, the sort of the purists who feel like Netflix is kind of barging in on their territory. So I think this is the test case much more than Roma was, and Roma was a pretty good test case as it was. So that could certainly factor in. And with that, we will be discussing this race throughout the season much more, and every race at the Oscars. So go visit goldderby.com and make your own predictions and prove us wrong if you think you know better than we do, which many of you probably do. And we will see you back here next week.